Hello and welcome to a new video on IGCSE mathematics. In this video, we shall be discussing sine and cosine rules. So the first question gives us a triangle ABC. We are required to use the cosine rule to calculate BC. So what is the cosine rule? The cosine rule is basically something similar to the Pythagorean theorem. So c squared equals a squared plus b squared. But we add an extra term, minus 2ab cosine of theta. And you have to understand that the c and the theta are opposite to each other. So what do I mean by that? C is a side, theta is an angle, and they are in the triangle, they are opposite to each other. So these two have to be opposite to each other. So the idea is to figure out where is c and where is theta. Of course, theta is the given angle. So 79 here, this is our theta. And c gives us the side opposite to theta. So this is where we're going to put c. It has nothing to do with the letters of the triangle. The triangle could have been MNP, for example. So you just have to figure out where to put the letter C in the rule, and it has to be opposite to the given angle. So now that we've confirmed this, let's figure out the equation. So c squared equals a squared and b squared are the other two sides, and they're given in the problem. So 8 squared plus 13 squared minus. It's always a good idea to understand that this is all one term. So 2ab cosine theta is a single term by itself. So it's good to just put brackets to remind yourself of that. So we have 2 times 8 times 13 times cosine of 79. If you're going to put it in the calculator as a single term, just make sure to put the brackets like I did, so that the calculator does not carry out a different sequence of operations. Because if you don't put the brackets, what's probably going to happen is, or what possibly could happen, is that the calculator calculates everything and then multiplies the answer by cosine 79. And this is going to be a very different answer from what we want. So let's just figure this out. I would recommend just calculating each term on its own. So 8 power 2 is 64. And just write c squared here as it is. 13 squared is 169. You can use your calculator for that, no problem. And then minus, and then you just calculate the term in the bracket on the calculator. So you just write 2 times 8 times 13 times cosine 79, and make sure that your calculator is set on degrees, not radians. And the answer is going to be 39.688. And then we figure out the addition of these three terms. So on the calculator as well, I'm just going to write 64 plus 169 minus 39.688. And I got 193.312. And this is the answer to c squared. So I just need to get the square root of this number. 193.312 under the root. And again, use your calculator. So root of 193.312 gives us 13.9. And this is the answer to C. So C is now 13.9. We can write it on the triangle as well. So instead of C here, I'm just going to write 13.9. And then for the sine rule, for double I, we want to use the sine rule to calculate angle ACB. So let's just put X here, for example, for angle ACB. This is the angle we're trying to figure out. And the sine rule says that every side over the sine of the opposite angle gives you the same result. So in other words, 13.9 over sine 79 equals 13 over sine x. And this is equal as well to 8 over sine angle B. But we don't really need this part. This is irrelevant to this question, so we don't really need it for now. All you have to do is cross multiply. So we get 13.9 sine x equals 13 sine 79. So you can calculate the right-hand side first. So you get 13 sine 79, which is 12.76115, or maybe just 12.7612. It's good to use a lot of decimals so as not to affect the accuracy of your final answer. So I'll just create some space for myself here, just to continue double I. So we have sine x equals 12.7612 divided by 13.9. And the reason I was able to do that is because I just took the 13.9 to the other side in the denominator. So this is the equation I got. I got sine x equals 12.7612 over 13.9. So let's just calculate that first. So 12.7612 divided by 13.9. This gives us 0.98107. So let's just write this down. So sine x equals 0.91807. It's good to use lots of decimals, especially when you're dealing with sine and cosine, because decimals give you a very big variation in the answer. So I'm just going to do shift sine. So the inverse sine, x is equal to inverse sine of this number. You just use shift and then sine on the calculator, and you put the same number you got. Of course, you could have just used the fraction, but I'm just trying to simplify things as much as possible for you. So it's shift sine 0.918072. And the answer, x equals 66.65. So this is the angle we're looking for. And this is the answer to double I. Let me write it in a box next to double I. This is the final answer. So let's check the marking scheme. As you can tell, the final answers are 13.9. And this is correct. And 66.6 or 66.65 is also correct. So these are the correct final answers. This question shows us two triangles, ABD and BCD. AD equals 16.5, BD equals 12.4, angle ADB equals 64, angle BDC equals 53, angle DBC equals 95. These are all evident on the drawing. We are required to find AB and BC. So here they're not telling us which rule to use, so we have to figure this out for ourselves. In the first triangle, we are given a side. We know this side. And we are given another side as well. And we are given the angle between them. So this is the perfect setting for the cosine rule. Side, angle, side. But if the angle is between the two sides, so this is when you use the cosine rule. So in order to figure out AB, we're just going to use the cosine rule. And the side opposite to the angle, this is where we put the letter C. And now we have C squared equals 16.5 squared plus 12.4 squared minus 2 times 16.5 times 12.4 multiplied by cosine the angle. So cosine 64. I'm just going to write it underneath here for space. But remember to put brackets surrounding this term because this is the confusing term. Now let's evaluate one number at a time. So 16.5 squared on the calculator gives us 272.25. So this is 272.25. 12.4 squared gives us 153.76 minus, and then we evaluate the term in the bracket as one term. You just do 2 times 16.5 times 12.4 times cosine 64, and you get 179.38. Next, you evaluate these three terms. Of course, we have here c squared equals these three terms. So now c squared equals, and we write on the calculator 272.25 plus 153.76 minus 179.38, and you get 246.63. And then you take the square root of the number. You don't have to write this down. I'm just doing it for clarity for you. You can just do it on the calculator. Root answer, and then root of 246.63 gives you 15.7, and that's the value of C. So this is the answer to question I. Question I is 15.7. This is the final answer for question I. And now for question double I, we are required to find BC. And BC, in the second triangle, we don't have the same case as the first triangle because we are given this side here, 12.4, and we are given two angles. Whenever you're given two angles, you can get the third angle automatically. So how do we do that? We know that 53, which is this angle, plus 95, which is this angle here, and then plus angle C, let's call this, for example, theta. These are three angles in a triangle, so their sum is 180. You can just add 53 and 95 together. And this gives us 148. So 148 plus theta equals 180. So theta equals 180 minus 148. And this gives us 32. So theta equals 32. Now that we have this angle, let's just write it in the drawing. We have 32 here. And these are opposite to each other. So whenever you have a side and an angle that are opposite to each other, you can use the sine rule to get whatever you want. And what we want here is to get BC. So BC is the side I'm coloring in blue right now. So this is X. And the rule says that the side over the sine of the angle is the same for all pairs. So for example, X over sine, the opposite angle to X is 53. These are opposite to each other. This has to be the same as this pair as well, because they are opposite to each other as well. So I'm just going to write 12.4 over sine 32. And the target is to find X by cross multiplying. X sine 32 is equal to 12.4 sine 53. And then we can evaluate the sine of each angle independently. So sine 32 is 0.5299. Just going to write a lot of decimals so as not to make mistakes. So 0.5299 multiplied by X is equal to 12.4 times sine 53. So again, let's evaluate sine 53 on the calculator. You get 0.7986. At least 4 decimals, so as not to make approximation mistakes. And then let's rewrite the equation with the decimals now. So we have x times 0.5299 equals 12.4 times 0.7986. And in order to get x, we can just divide here by 0.5299. And we use the calculator to evaluate. So 12.4 multiplied by 0.7986, and then divided by 0.5299. And the answer to x is 18.6877. So 18.6877, which is basically 18.7. So this is our final answer. So let's check the marking scheme. As you can tell, the answer to the first question is 15.7. And the answer to the second question is 18.7. So we seem to have obtained the correct answers here. Our final question for this video, we have two triangles again, SPR and QPR. Our first task is to calculate QR. So QR is in this triangle here. And in this triangle, we are given this side, and it's equal to 120, and this side as well, and this is equal to 150, and the angle between them is 25, and we can tell that this is the opposite side to the angle. So this is where we're going to put C. We have C squared equals A squared plus B squared minus 2AB cosine theta. Of course, C and theta are opposites to each other, like we said before, and we're using the cosine rule because we have two sides and the included angle. We have two sides and the angle between them. So here, the appropriate rule is the cosine rule. So in this case, we can just say 120 squared plus 150 squared minus 2 times 120 times 150 multiplied by cosine of 25. And all of this is in a bracket. So let's evaluate each term individually. Of course, this is all equal to C squared. So C squared is equal to the following. 120 squared is 14400. And then 150 squared is 22500. And then minus, and then we evaluate the term in the bracket. Two times 120 times 150 times cosine 25. And this gives us 32627. And it's good to write a couple of decimals as well. So 0.0803. And then we evaluate these three terms added together. So 14400 plus 22500 minus 32627.0803. So C squared is equal to 4272.9197. Now C is the radical of that, so I just take the square root of the answer. So square root of 4272, excuse me, 0.9197 gives us 65.367. So 65.38 maybe. This is the value of C. And this is the value of QR. So this is our answer to A. So let's write that in a box next to A. 65.38 is the answer to A. Now for question B, we are required to find RS. So RS exists in the second triangle, and it's pretty much the same concept as what we did in the last question. We have this triangle here. We have angle 55 and angle 45. So we just do 180 minus 55 plus 45. You have to evaluate the brackets before putting it in the calculator, or you put the brackets in the calculator. So 55 plus 45 gives you 100. 180 minus 100 gives you 80. And what I've been doing is I've been trying to calculate the third angle here, because whenever you have two angles in a triangle, you can just get the third angle very simply. So now that we have the third angle, we are okay to go ahead and use the sine rule. If we have all three angles, we can definitely use the sine rule, because you must have a side opposite to one of the given angles, and this is the case here as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by writing the sine rule, given that we're trying to find RS. So let's just put X here and note to ourselves that this is opposite to the 55. So our rule becomes X over sine 55 equals 150 over sine 80. I just use every side and its opposite angle. So let's get sine 55. Sine 55 is 0.81915. So 0.819, at least 4 decimals. So 0.8192. And then sine 80, excuse me, it's equal to 0.9848. And then we cross multiply. So we have X times 0.9848 equals 150 times 0.8192. I apologize for the tight space. So anyway, let's write this equation somewhere else so that we have enough space to figure it out. Let's just make some space here. I'm just going to rewrite this equation for clarity. I have X times 0.9848 equals 150 times 0.8192. Now, in order to get X, all we have to do is just divide by 0.9848. And you no longer have this here. And you just use your calculator. So 150 multiplied by 0.8192 equals 122.88. And then you divide the answer by 0.9848. And you get 124.77. So X equals 124.77. So you just write maybe 0.8. And this is the answer to B. So finally, we are required to find the total area of the two triangles. So the rule for the area is basically A capital for area, half AB sine theta. Like the cosine rule, you are required to find two sides and the angle between them. So for the triangle PQR, which is colored mostly in red, area of triangle PQR, this would be half times 120 times 150 times sine 25. And you can just calculate this with your calculator. So half times 120 times 150 times sine 25. This gives you 3,803.56. So 3,803.56. This is the area of triangle PQR. Now we need to find the area of the upper triangle, which is PSR. So let me just create some space. So the area of triangle PSR, again, it's half times AB sine theta. So in this case, we need two sides and the included angle. We have the sides of 150. So let me just color that here. We have this side here, side 150. And we have this side as well because we obtained that. This is the x of SR, which is basically what we got in B. So we just have two sides, which are 150 for the first side and 124.8 for the second side. And we need the included angle between them, which is this angle here, which is 45. So sine 45. And we type this into the calculator. So half multiplied by 150 multiplied by 124.8 multiplied by sine 45. Your answer is 6,618. So the area for PSR would be 6,618.5, just for accuracy. Now that you obtained the area of each triangle separately, all that is left to do is calculate the total area as the sum of the two areas. So we start by 3,803.56 added to the second area, which is 6,618.5. And the final answer is going to be, on the calculator, 3,803.56 plus 6,618.5 gives you 10422.06. And this is the final answer. Let's check the marking scheme. You have, let's just clear the screen to check. You have 65.4, you have 124.8, and you have 10,400 for the final area.